It started like any other quiet evening. The kind where you expect nothing more than the usual dinner, a bit of small talk, and maybe a show playing softly in the background. But that night, everything changed. I never thought I'd witness something so disturbing, not once, but over and over again. And the hardest part? It happened right under my roof, with someone I thought I could trust, my own stepson. When I married his father, I knew things wouldn't be easy. Blending a family takes time. I tried to be patient, supportive, and understanding. At first, he was distant, which made sense. But slowly, too slowly for me to notice what was really going on, his behavior started to shift. There were little things, late-night disappearances, a strange tension whenever he walked into the room, and those eyes, like he was carrying something he didn't want anyone to see. One night, I walked past his door. It was slightly open, and I saw something I wasn't supposed to. I froze. My heart pounded. What I saw didn't make sense at first. It wasn't illegal, but it wasn't right either. I tried to forget it. I told myself I misunderstood. But deep down, I knew the truth. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. You start questioning everything. I wanted to tell his father, but how do you even begin that conversation? How do you explain that your stepson, the boy you helped raise, is spiraling out of control and dragging someone else into it? I kept hoping it was a one-time thing. That he would come to his senses. But it wasn't. It kept happening. Again and again. The guilt. The secrets. The way he looked at me like he knew I wouldn't say anything. Like he dared me to. I felt trapped. Torn between protecting the people I love and facing a truth that could destroy everything. And then, one night, it all came crashing down. I was there when it happened again. Only this time, it was worse. That's when I realized, pretending not to see wasn't going to save anyone. Let me tell you what really happened. But be warned, this story doesn't end the way you think it will. It all began to make more sense when I started connecting the little things I'd ignored for too long. A few months before everything spiraled, my stepson, Adil, had come back from college. He dropped out quietly, without giving us much of an explanation. His father, my husband, chalked it up to stress and never pushed him too hard. But I could feel it, there was something off about Adil. He wasn't the same boy who used to joke around at the dinner table. His energy had changed. He was colder, more distant, like he was carrying a storm inside him. The first real sign came one morning when I found him sitting alone in the backyard, staring blankly at nothing. I tried to talk to him, asked if he was okay. He forced a smile and said, "Yeah, just tired." But it wasn't just tiredness. It was something deeper, something eating away at him. I wish I had pushed harder that day. I wish I had listened more closely. Maybe then I would have seen where things were heading. As the weeks passed, Adil's mood swings became more frequent. He'd disappear at odd hours, come home late, sometimes smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. I tried not to overthink it. He was a grown man, after all. But there was one night, I remember it clearly, I saw him speaking in hushed tones on the phone, pacing back and forth in the dark hallway. When I asked who it was, he just said, "A friend." Nothing important. But his eyes were uneasy, and I could sense the lie hanging heavy between us. Things got worse inside the house too. Tension grew between him and his father. My husband often said Adil seemed angry all the time, but every time they tried to talk, Adil would shut down. I stayed quiet, caught in the middle, feeling helpless. But the worst part was, I could see something forming, a secret. Something Adil was hiding. And I was slowly beginning to realize I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was becoming part of that secret, whether I wanted to or not. That night, the one I mentioned before, when I saw it happen again, it confirmed everything. The pattern. The lie. The danger. But what I didn't know was that the worst was still ahead. What Adil was hiding wasn't just reckless, it was something that could destroy all of us. After that night, I couldn't sleep the same way anymore. Every creak of the floor, every phone vibration made my heart race. I kept thinking, what else don't I know? What's still hidden? The secret I saw that night wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, like a slow leak behind a wall. But it was enough. Enough to change how I looked at Adil forever. He had gone into the guest room, and that's when I noticed it, the messages on his unlocked phone, left carelessly on the table. I didn't mean to look, but once my eyes caught the name and the words, I froze. It wasn't just some random chat. It was personal. Risky. And way too close to home. What scared me most was that the person on the other end wasn't some outsider. It was someone we both knew. Someone who should have never crossed that line. Suddenly, his odd behavior made sense. The coldness, the secrecy, the late-night walks, all of it. But what I couldn't figure out was why. What pushed him into this? Was it rebellion? Was he hurting inside? Or was it something darker, some kind of power trip, knowing he was doing something forbidden and daring me to speak up? Meanwhile, my husband remained clueless. He kept brushing off Adil's attitude as a phase. I wanted to scream. How could he not see it? I couldn't tell him, not yet. Not without proof. Not without understanding the full truth. Because if I was right about what Adil was doing, it wouldn't just hurt him. It would shatter this family. It would destroy trust, ruin bonds, and leave scars none of us could erase. To make things more complicated, I started noticing strange behavior from the other person involved. They acted nervous around me, avoided eye contact, even stammered during casual conversations. It was like both of them were pretending nothing was happening, but their guilt showed in every awkward silence and every half-hearted smile. And I was the only one pretending not to see. I felt trapped between two sides of a truth no one wanted to admit. I needed answers, but asking the wrong question could burn everything to the ground. And still, deep inside, a part of me wondered, how far had it gone? And how much worse could it get before it all finally came out? Days passed, but the weight of what I knew only grew heavier. Every time I looked at Adil, it felt like I was watching a ticking time bomb, calm on the outside, chaos just beneath the surface. He moved through the house like nothing was wrong, but I could see the cracks in his act. The way he avoided eye contact. The way he flinched every time his phone buzzed. And worst of all, the way the other person in this mess, someone who should have known better, began acting more and more distant, like guilt was swallowing them whole. One evening, my husband suggested we all have dinner together, hoping to ease the tension he barely understood. I watched as Adil sat across from us, calm and collected, even cracking jokes like he used to. But I knew better now. Every word he said felt rehearsed, like a performance. The other person barely touched their food, their hands trembling slightly. I could feel the air shift. My chest tightened. I kept waiting for something to slip, one wrong word, one suspicious look, but they held it together. After dinner, Adil stayed behind to help with the dishes, something he never did. I kept my distance, but I watched him from the hallway mirror, trying to read his face. He wasn't just pretending. He was controlling the narrative. Carefully keeping the truth just out of reach. And that's when I realized, he wasn't scared. He was calculating. Later that night, I overheard them. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their voices drifted from the guest room, low and urgent. I crept closer, my heart pounding. They were arguing. Whispers full of panic. Adil's voice sharp, trying to stay calm but clearly losing grip. I couldn't make out every word, but one line hit me like ice: if she finds out, it's over for both of us. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. She. That meant me. Whatever they were hiding, it had reached its limit. They knew I was too close. And now, it wasn't just a secret. It was a threat. One they were trying to manage before it exploded. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Because the moment I opened my eyes the next morning, I knew something had changed. The silence in the house wasn't normal. It was the kind of silence that comes before everything breaks. The next morning, everything felt wrong. The silence was too heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. My husband had already left for work, and the house felt empty, but not in the usual peaceful way. It felt like something was watching. I walked past Adil's door. It was shut tight, locked from the inside. The other room, the guest room, was open, but it looked untouched. No signs of anyone having stayed there. It was strange. Almost too neat. Like someone had erased the evidence. I sat in the kitchen with my tea going cold, staring at my phone. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. That's when I heard the front door open. I thought it might be Adil, but it wasn't. It was someone else. Someone I hadn't seen in months, his mother. She walked in like she owned the place, calm, collected, and far too confident for a woman who barely called her son. Her sudden appearance threw me completely off. I greeted her with forced politeness, but my heart was pounding. She didn't waste time on small talk. She asked where Adil was, said she needed to speak to him urgently. Her tone wasn't warm, it was sharp, almost threatening. Before I could respond, Adil came downstairs. His face changed the moment he saw her. Not in a happy or surprised way, but in that look of someone who'd just been caught. They went into the living room, and I couldn't help but listen. What I heard shattered everything I thought I understood. She knew. She knew what Adil was hiding. But what shocked me even more, she wasn't angry. She was worried. Not about what he'd done, but about the consequences if it got out. She kept saying things like, "We've covered this before," and "You promised you'd stop." My heart sank. This wasn't new. This wasn't something that had just happened recently. This had been going on for years. And not only did she know, she had helped him cover it up. That was the second twist I hadn't seen coming. I thought Adil was spiraling on his own. But now I realized, he wasn't alone in it. His own mother had been protecting him all along, enabling his behavior while pretending everything was fine on the surface. And then she said something that made my stomach turn. "She's getting too close. If she opens her mouth, we're finished." I knew she was talking about me. At that point, I didn't know whether I was more shocked or scared. It wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was a hidden web of secrets, lies, and manipulation, stretching back further than I ever imagined. And now I wasn't just an observer. I was the threat they were trying to silence. I backed away from the hallway quietly, my mind racing. How far would they go to protect their secret? And was I really prepared for what was coming next? I didn't wait. That same night, I quietly packed a small bag, tucked my phone in my pocket, and drove to a friend's house nearby. I needed time to think, space to breathe. But more than that, I needed proof. Something real. Because deep down, I knew confronting them without evidence would only make things worse. And now that I knew Adil's mother was involved, the stakes were even higher. It wasn't just about bad choices anymore, it was about control, manipulation, and a long history of covering things up. The next day, I returned home as if nothing happened. I acted normal. Smiled. Cooked dinner. But I had placed a hidden recorder in the living room before I left. That evening, Adil and his mother sat exactly where I expected. They didn't know I was listening from my room upstairs. I caught everything. The names. The details. The lies. And then came the confession, the one thing I didn't expect. Adil admitted it hadn't just been one person. There had been others. Quiet affairs. Manipulated emotions. Even threats to keep people silent. His mother said she had used her contacts more than once to keep things under wraps. My stomach turned. It was worse than I imagined. That night, I played the recording for my husband. At first, he didn't believe it. He shook his head, tried to reason it away. But as the voices played on, his ex-wife's calm instructions, his son's cold admissions, his face changed. Slowly. Like someone watching their entire world crack apart. He didn't say a word for a long time. Then he got up, walked out the front door, and drove off. The fallout was quick. Adil's mother tried to flip the story, said I'd set them up. But it was too late. The recording spoke for itself. And just when I thought everything was over, one last twist came. A woman came forward, someone I didn't know. She contacted me privately. She said Adil had hurt her too, long before I ever entered the picture. She'd been silenced back then, by his mother. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't just our family's secret. It was a pattern, one that had finally been exposed. The truth had come out. But at what cost? After everything came out, the silence that followed was different. Not heavy or threatening, but necessary. Adil moved out the very next week. There was no dramatic goodbye, no apology. Just quiet bags packed and a slammed door. His mother left town shortly after, once it was clear no one was buying her version of the story. My husband stayed distant for a while. He was dealing with the shame, the guilt, the weight of a truth he'd ignored for too long. I didn't blame him for being blind, but I couldn't excuse it either. We talked, really talked, for the first time in weeks. He admitted he had seen warning signs but chose peace over conflict. It was hard to hear, but at least he owned it. That honesty mattered more to me than anything. Slowly, we began rebuilding, not just our marriage, but our trust. Brick by brick. The woman who came forward? She was brave. She filed a formal complaint, and though the process was long, she found support. She wasn't silenced this time. Her voice gave others the strength to step up too. It reminded me that sometimes, the things we try to hide the most are what others need to hear the loudest. The truth, even when it hurts, is better than living in a lie. As for me, I changed too. I stopped doubting my instincts. I stopped staying quiet to keep the peace. This experience taught me that family drama, secrets, and betrayal don't just damage relationships, they distort our sense of self. I had to choose between protecting a secret or protecting my own peace. And I'm glad I chose peace. Life hasn't gone back to what it was before, but maybe that's a good thing. There's more honesty now. More caution, too. We don't pretend anymore. We talk when things feel off. We don't wait for damage to become disaster. And though the scars remain, they remind us of what we survived. In the end, this story wasn't just about my stepson's infidelity, or his lies, or the manipulation that nearly destroyed us. It was about how secrets can rot a home from the inside, and how facing the truth, no matter how painful, can finally set it free.